I'll describe the more general algorithm again, but with a more graphical syntax, and then we'll leave it at that. The maximum matching, unlike the general case, for outer planar or pseudo-knot-free structures already gives you a reasonable structure. It's much better than this original one where the numbers were essentially predetermined and everything turns into a clump. Here, this is sensible, but people observed that it's still counting the total number of pairs is not as good as counting pair stackings. And we can extend the dynamic programming. I was waving my hands already on how to do that. For going further and for the extensions that people then further did, they often went to a more pictographic way of showing DP recursions. And I think this is just, in a way, beautiful in its own right. So maybe it's useful to just show you this as an example. Maybe it helps you think about such problems. The specific recursion, maybe don't worry about that for now. Just the syntax is you're looking at a substructure from some position to some other position. It may have some constraints, like in this case, the wiggly thing means there has to be a pair. So the outermost two elements are paired, whereas what's inside here, we don't know. And so we say the value of this substructure is the best of, so it's minimization here we used to maximize. Minimum would be for free energy. It's the best of certain possible options you have. Either it could be that there's no further pairs in this range. The white area means no more pairs. Or it could be there is a pair, then you find the outermost inner pair, the rest is white, and here you recurse. This obviously has the same shape as this, so you know what to do. Right? In a DP recurrence, you would have some, this would have some name and some parameters ij, and then this would be the same name with appropriately adjusted I and j, so some new parameters I prime, j prime. Or maybe you say there's a cut point k, where these dashed lines mean I don't commit yet to what's happening here between the outermost pairs. Could be anything. Yeah, it could be paired or not. But I know that the substructure, so this part is white, which means there's more pairs in here or more pairs in here maybe, but nothing between them. Okay, this is roughly clear. And with that, you can express what I tried to describe earlier. We need two mutual recursive constructions. We need one where we know that the outermost bases are paired, and one where the outermost bases are not paired, or we don't know. It doesn't actually matter because we determine the best possible structure. If I had the choice to add another pair, that's always going to be better. So I think it doesn't matter if you restrict, if you here say the semantic is there cannot be the pair ij, or whether you say it's not fixed. It could be there or could not be there. I think it doesn't matter. Okay, so you could do counting the number of stackings in the following way. If you know the outermost pair is there, either there's nothing further in there, or you find the next inside, or you do the bifurcation. And for this part, you have the option to put the pair there and recurse, or have unpaired I or j, or further bifurcate. It's not an ambiguous decomposition, but it's good enough for a minimization. You see here that if you have several ways to bifurcate, you may do this in any order, and it's not unique, but doesn't matter for minimization. Okay. This complexity doesn't change by this if you implement it well. Now remember what this looked like here. There were all these lovely numbers shown. Where do these come from? obviously they're not simply counting pairs, etc., but rather they have a chemical model in mind that's known as the Turner model, because this guy owns some lab and they've done tons of experiments to figure out for all sorts of small substructures what their contribution to the overall stability of a molecule is. So even counting these stackings is still a relatively rough approximation. It depends on the exact basis. So the bonds between GC are much stronger than AU, and GU is even weaker. Also, I showed this in the tool earlier, that sometimes adding another base in the unpaired part changes the contribution to stabilization. And even what's in the hairpin loop can influence things. So as a culmination of a lot of lab work, they published for all sorts of structures the corresponding energy contributions, long big tables that we don't want to go through. I just want to conceptually show how they work. And I think it maps nicely to, again, the graph representation. In a way, you could say they give an energy contribution to each of these faces in the planar graph. So for example, one for this blue part, which would be a destabilization because there's a bulge. And the green one is a stacked pair, so that would be stabilizing. And they have lots of tables that tell you, depending on what the bases there are and how big the bulges are and how big these multi-loops are and all for various combinations of things, they tell you what the energy value is, the contribution to free energy. So in theory, all you have to do is decompose a large structure into all these possible faces. If you do this directly, it actually doesn't work, because think about this huge face here where I put the text in. You could have as many pairs inside there as you want. And if you want to optimize where they need to go in the dynamic programming, these are a lot of variables. So that would drive up the running time essentially beyond polynomial. So what people do is you're restricted to 2 pairs inside. So you have this wiggly line outside, and you allow 2 more wiggly lines inside. If it's more than that, you do some heuristic and say, I'm splitting off 1, and there's an additive function that you can deal with without specifying them already. And I think the energy models also aren't so precise for these big structures. They only work well for the small faces. So with that, you get essentially the same kind of recursion as you had here. Instead of having more of these inside, you would use this rule and give a general contribution to this outer loop. So that's called Zucker's algorithm. One of the other people involved also with the papers here. But it's by and large the same dynamic programming algorithm. My understanding is that's essentially also what Eterna uses. So this is still state of the art, even though the papers are 20 years old.